With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
We could tell you that Penelope Bourbon's 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey is a multiple double gold winner at SIP Awards, or that Wine Enthusiast named it a Best Buy, or that Tasting Table named it one of the 12 best small batch bourbons under $40. But really, all you need to know about Penelope 4-grain is that it aims to please. Whether you enjoy it neat or mixed in your favorite cocktail, Penelope 4-grain is a staple in every well-stocked bar. Pick up your bottle at penelopebourbon.com.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, my co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there in the fireplace room?
Mark, I am great. You turned the heat up for me super early in the day out here. We got the fireplace roaring. It is a good night here in the Bourbon Life Studios.
Yeah, man, you got your beanie back on. I'm glad to see that, the return of the beanie. It's been 20 degrees this morning here in Lexington.
Yeah, no kidding. A nice frosty morning and day here in Kentucky necessitates the beanie.
Yeah, and the delicious warming bourbon and whiskey that we're going to be drinking here shortly. So we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring you this show each week without them. With that said, Matt, we've got a room full of guests here tonight. You want to tell everybody who we have with us?
Absolutely. We are outnumbered on our own show here. And I'm going to say that's probably a great thing because we have joining us the founder, Robert Likarish, master distiller and blender, Jonathan Likarish, and also the mother of Texas whiskey, Marcia Likarish, all from Ironroot Republic Distillery in Denison, Texas. Crew, welcome on to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to get you guys on here. First time you guys have been on here, which is our bad, and I apologize in advance for not having you guys on here sooner. We should have done this. We've had you on the list and just had not make it happen. So we're happy to have you guys on here so we can talk. I know you've been on the whiskey trip with our good friend, Big Chief Mike Hyatt. On his show. And he says, tell you guys hello, of course, this evening as well. But we're glad to have you guys on here. Really looking forward to this. I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got 4 different whiskeys we're going to be drinking tonight as well, instead of just the normal 3. So we got a lot of ground to cover. So the first round, we're going to be drinking it's the Sleight of Hand bourbon. So I'll let one of you just jump in and kind of tell everybody a little bit about what we're going to be drinking in this first round.
Jump in, Jonathan.
All right. So Sleight of Hand bourbon is one of our newest expressions. We're really excited because we've got something that's a little bit lighter on the proof. So, it's nice during the winter to warm up with those big cast strength things and hazmat bottlings. But every once in a while, you need a little bit of respite from that. And so this Sleight of Hand bourbon is following. We have Sleight of Hand brandy, we have Sleight of Hand rye, but Sleight of Hand bourbon is fun because it's a blend that we get to do. And I really like to combine column still distillate and pot still distillate.
Okay.
And so I don't think I can tell you exactly where this comes from, but I will tell you there's an Indiana distillery that has some bourbon. There's 2 Kentucky distilleries that have some bourbon. And then we blend some of all that with some of our bourbon. And we really blend our pot still distillate in there. It's going to give it a little bit more to the mid palate. It's going to fill out kind of the finish on it, give it a lot of mouthfeel. So we like to think of it as a roux when you're cooking. So when you add in that pot still distillate, it's important because it really gives a real depth of flavor to it.
Yeah, very cool. So this is 92 proof. It's non-age stated, correct? I don't see an age statement on there. So we're over 4 years.
Yes, sir.
On everything, right? Okay.
And it's a blend of 4 to 8 year old bourbon in here.
Okay. All right, cool. And I noticed it's non-chill filtered as well. Not that everybody freaks out. I mean, that was a huge thing. Everybody was like, "Ooh, non-chill filtered." It's still important. Obviously, it has an impact on the whiskey, I think, anyway. But I did see it as non-chill filter, so I always like to throw those facts out there. Matt, you know how I do it, man. What do you pick up on that nose?
I really like the nose, and the fact that, Jonathan, that you were talking about, that it's a blend also of pot stilled whiskey on there, your pot still, I think really makes its presence on the nose. I'm sure it will on the palate as well. But on the nose, it's got really great, like nice, tight, concise bourbon notes. There's a lot of the creamy vanillas, barrel influence, like a slight, almost like bruleed sugar type note, a little bit of like cherry or some stone fruit on it. But then you go back in and there's just those really kind of like loose notes that one might pick up from a pot still, where sometimes you get these really lovely, like weird, but kind of like out there sort of funky notes that I noticed from pots. And I don't mean this in any way to be negative, but they're what we absolutely love about pot stilled whiskey is sometimes the nose on a good pot stilled whiskey can be all over the place. And with how tight this is in some of the areas and how well it really does nose like a great bourbon, there are just those really bright kind of funky notes also from the pot still. I really like it.
Yeah, man, I think that's great. I mean, I agree with the bourbon notes that you talked about. That the bruleed sugar was spot on for me as well. But then you talk about the pot still, and it does add a little bit. We always call it funkiness, and I don't know any other way to really say it because it does have that depth of flavor to it. It's a different flavor than a column still. Column still is going to strip out a lot more of the esters and things in there, and that pot still, depending on how it's set up and how you run it, obviously you can get a lot of those deeper flavors. And I think that really comes through on this, at least on the nose. I haven't tasted it yet. But anything else, guys, you want to throw in there in terms of the nose that Matt missed?
I think you did a great job.
Jonathan, what about you? You're the master distiller. So any other notes out there?
I think he did a real good job with it. Some of that funkiness that I think you're going to get from our distillate has to do with some of the yeast we use. We use kind of an M1 old school Scotch yeast,
Okay.
But it's also used in the Caribbean for rum production. And so sometimes we'll get some of these notes that are a little bit rummy. And so when you say the word funky, sometimes my mind goes there. Sometimes they'll pick up a little bit of that rumminess, sometimes a little bit of an Armagnac kind of characteristic to it. But we actually really lean into that a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now I'm sitting here trying to nose those out. It's like, that makes some sense. So guys, let's talk about yourselves. I mean, we'd love to let our listeners know who our guests are. So there's 3 of you. So if you each want to just take a little bit of time, and I don't care who, Mama could start first, I guess, if you'd like, but take a little time, tell us about who you are, your background, and obviously how you got into the whiskey industry.
Well, my background actually is I'm a speech pathologist. And before we started the distillery, I worked over 20 years with preschool children with disabilities. And I always say that was good training to work with my sons. So,
man,
you got to have a lot of patience there, right? But it was kind of like after I retired, we kind of started this together. Robert had graduated from law school, and he had decided that was not his path. And when his father said to him, "Well, Robert, what is it that you think you might want to do?" And we had visited a distillery in Washington on a vacation a number of years earlier, and that kind of always planted the seed. And he threw out, he says, "You're going to start a distillery." And Rob said, "I think we should." And it was the right time. It was the right place. I was not working at the time. So we really got to jump in it together. Jonathan is at that point the only one that had besides Dad. Dad always had the real job, but actually Jonathan had the job, and he was working in Texas. So it was a big leap of faith for him. Robert had already made the decision that he was going to. He liked to. I think he was looking for something that he could do that they could create. I think their dad always told them, they said, I worked for industry for years and years, but, at the end of the day, all you have is a watch. And he said, it's really nice if you can have something that you've created. So he encouraged them, and it is so much fun. What I love about this industry is all the people we've met. And from day one, we met people in Kentucky, and everybody was so encouraging and so helpful. And it just, I don't know, we've just had a blast doing this. And it's been 10 years. Yeah. Can you believe it?
Wow. That's awesome. Guys, listen, I'll tell you real quick. My mom was a psychiatric nurse for 30 years. So trust me, I know, moms that work with patients and then come home and analyze their kids. So trust me, I went through the ringer for a long time, guys. So I empathize with you on that one. So, all right, guys, who wants to go next?
I guess I'll jump in. So as Mom mentioned, I was in law school, and I had decided that I wasn't going to do law, but I didn't really know what to do. And Mom left out the fun part of the story, which is that I decided to announce that I wasn't going to be a lawyer at the Christmas dinner before I graduated in May. And it was, I just never forget, because it was right before we started eating, and it just went dead silent in the room. And I see my mom there just kind of chugging wine a little bit. And that's, her famous quote from that evening was, "Robert, I know you know how to drink whiskey, but do you have any idea how to make it?" And the answer was absolutely not. I didn't know. But Jonathan and I took several years and went and took classes from different distilleries around the country. We went interned at a bunch of different places. And ultimately, we fell in with a master cognac distiller named Hubert Germain Rabon and his apprentice, Nancy Fraley. And that's really where everything really kind of came together for us, is kind of through that experience. And we fell in love with kind of the overall French approach to brandy making and the cognac, and kind of the thoughtful process they go through when choosing and selecting how they're going to make the spirits, how to make the cuts. And that's really influenced everything that we do at the distillery. It's why we ended up in Denison to begin with. The little city that we're in is actually sister cities with cognac. Okay. It's got a really crazy wine history, which I don't have got time to go into that, but I can definitely do that if you want me to. But it kind of, it felt natural since we learned all these cognac techniques to kind of end up in this place that had this deep connection with cognac. And then because of that, actually the mayor from Cognac, a lot of the master distillers actually come over and visit us every few years. And
wow,
had the opportunity to go over to Cognac and distill over there with them. So it's been a really great kind of, things have just flowed. I always like to joke, it's always better to be lucky than good. We've been really, really lucky throughout this entire process, from getting our stills to falling in with Hubert and ending up in Denison. Everything's really been a cool journey for us, for sure.
And guess who's coming next week? Hubert.
Yeah, he's coming.
He's coming to the distillery for the very first time in December. Mm-hmm. We're so excited.
That's very nice. Well, Rob, I'll tell you, I've been an attorney for 30 years, still practice, and you made the smart choice, man. So I'm just going to tell you that straight up. I'd much rather be distilling whiskey than doing what I do still. But hey, at least I get to do this. So it's it's fun.
I took the ethics exam, and then I was going to prep for the bar while setting up the distillery down in Texas. And we were probably about a month into working on construction, everything like that. And I called my mom and I was like, there ain't no way I'm studying for the bar.
No, sir. No, I don't blame you, man. That's a smart move. Jonathan, what about you, man?
I'm an engineer by trade. So I did industrial engineering, biomedical engineering, half a mechanical engineering degree. And I was working at a place called Medtronic down in Fort Worth. And what we were doing was we were designing, at that point in time, saw blades, little tiny ones used during neurosurgery. And so at that facility, we did drills, drill bits, saws, and saw blades.
Ow, that just makes my head hurt.
So not that big of a change. Just hopped over, started doing distillation.
Yeah, kind of the same thing, right? Yeah. No, that's really cool. Now I understand. I think were you born in Texas? Is that right?
I was born in El Paso, so I'm the 100% born and raised Texan.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But you know what they say in Texas? The rest of us got here as soon as we could.
Oh, yeah, I like that. And we'll talk about that some more in terms of the Texas decision next round when we talk more about the distillery itself and planting yourselves in Denison. But you'd been there, Marcia. You guys, you lived in Texas at one point though? Is that right? Well, yeah, you did because obviously Jonathan was born here.
Because Jonathan was born there. Yes.
They're just driving through.
Wait, what proof? Yeah, he's just born in the back seat of the Chevy on the way through Texas. Yep. Congratulations, you're a Texan.
Yeah. John, my husband and I, we were from Montana, but his first job was actually in El Paso. And so we spent 11 years in El Paso. And then we moved to New Jersey where Rob was born because his dad worked in New York. And then we're back to Texas most of the rest of the time.
Yeah,
except
very
then
nice.
When they graduated, we ended up in St. Louis, and that's why they all went to school there.
Oh,
for their graduate school.
You guys have gone around quite a bit now, but you're settled there in Texas. You've been there for how long? You guys been in Texas now since like 14 or something?
So we started the distillery officially opened up in 14. We got back in 2012 to work on everything.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, growing up, I'm just curious, were you guys into bourbon or whiskey at all when you were younger? Or is this something that just kind of, how was it that you got into it and, thought, hey, whiskey's cool. I really want to do this.
Their mom's on the show. Be careful when you say younger there, Mark.
Actually, we found out a bunch of things since then.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I would drink bourbon in college. I was a big bourbon fan.
I would say like growing up though, like mom and dad didn't really do a whole lot of drinking. They, at least after they got out of their El Paso years, they didn't do a ton of drinking. I would always see wine at Christmas and Easter. It wasn't until after I graduated from high school that my parents started drinking again. I think that they finally felt relaxed enough to start drinking again. So my mom and dad got back in. My mom actually fell in love with a beer. She was like Belgian beers and stuff like that, which was really crazy. And then my dad got into wine tasting and sort of dragging Jonathan and I with them to wine tasting when we'd be back from college. And where they did a lot of the wine tasting, the guy would import a little bit of cognac and Armagnac. And so he'd always take my dad, and then if it was Jonathan or I with him, we'd go back to the office and we'd start drinking Armagnac and cognac. So for me, although I did drink everything in college, all the Katie I could drink, it really, I think, love affair for spirits really started with cognac and Armagnac for me, whereas Jonathan was Weller Antique in college because it was high proof and cheap at the time.
All the gold veins back in the day.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy, man, to think about? Yeah, just crazy to think about that. And you guys were in St. Louis, but I was like, down in Texas, it seems like you see that all over the place. People just finding Wellers and everything else down there, just like all over. You can't find it in Kentucky. It's made in Kentucky. Nobody could find it here, but Texas and Ohio seem to have like a plethora of Weller, which is kind of crazy. Well, guys, let's jump back over to this sleight of hand, and let's talk a little bit about the palate and the finish on this one. Matt, you know what I do. I'm going to throw it over to you, man. What do you think?
You caught me right. A little bit of a cough there.
Sorry about that, man.
No problem. The palate on this, I really pick up a lot of the cherry note that came through on the nose. Comes right up front on the palate. Then some of those, like right afterwards, some of those funky pot still notes really come through. There's, I pick up like apple. There's like a tart apple, almost like a kettle corn, like some of the grain comes through in it, and it's like this nice sweet corn or like kettle corn type flavor and aroma. There's a definite creamy full body that comes through, like mid palate, like you were talking about, Jonathan, where you get a lot of that experience, that like really creaminess really hits really well mid palate. It's nice and spicy, good amount of peppercorn with a nice, beautiful long finish. I'm really surprised actually that it's 92 proof. I think it drinks a good bit warmer than that, but I'm certainly not going to say that it's like over indulgent at like it's not burning me up or anything, but I think it really brings a lot of value at the proof point.
Yeah, I think that's what surprised me, Matt, was the you talk about the little bit of that spiciness. It's kind of like almost to me like a rye spiciness, peppery type of flavor on there. Because you get that sweetness up front. You talk about kettle corn, you talk about the corn flavor, and you get those bourbonish notes, you get that sweet corn, and you get the sweetness in your palate, and then all of a sudden it just like switches over to this spiciness that lingers. And again, it's not hot, but it's kind of a surprise. I don't think I was expecting that. And I think because of that, it feels like it drinks hotter than 92 proof, but it's still something that is easy to drink on. It doesn't burn you up at all, but it's just got a nice little surprise of a little bit of that spiciness at the end that I don't think I was expecting. So anything else, guys, that we missed in terms of the palate and the finish you want to throw in there?
I think you get a lot of that, like that warm vanilla on the back also, right as the finish. But there's also, I think, a little bit of an apricot on there that I like as far as the fruit. Besides the cherry, I think you get some other nice fruit notes in there.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think that's something that Jonathan always likes to really emphasize on his blends is really focusing on the overall fruit. So a lot of what we do is trying to emphasize different fruit profiles throughout any of the blends that we do.
Gotcha. Now, you talked about the yeast that you use. Does that yeast yield a fruity effect as well? Is that part of the process of using that yeast?
It does. It can produce a variety of different fruit notes, and it ranges in everything from darker figs and dates, kind of dried fruit, to it'll put out some really interesting red fruits as well. But the one I think I like the best is when we get the plum notes. Those are my favorite.
Yeah. So the sleight of hand. So you said you've got the rye. Is this the first time you released it as a bourbon though, right? Is that what you said?
Correct. Okay.
So is this will be a continual release then, or was this it will be? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So in terms of your blending, you think you'll look like, will you try to follow the same profile from release? Like every time you release this, you're going to shoot for that same, what we're tasting tonight, or will it just be kind of a different release? Is going to have maybe a different profile to it?
It should be pretty similar and pretty consistent on that particular product. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, I tell you what, I mean, we're already at the end of round one. That was fast. When you're drinking good whiskey and have a good conversation, it's like, wow. Okay. So I'll tell you what, well, Matt, what are your final thoughts on this sleight of hand? What do you think?
I really like it. Mark, you and I have had a fair amount of Kentucky and Indiana products, probably from similar Kentucky and Indiana distilleries. And I really like the addition of the Ironroot in here, your Texas whiskey bourbon in this one. I think it really stands out and makes it unique from what could be just a really great blend of some Kentucky and Indiana. I think adding that extra layer in there really, really helps to shine through and to differentiate this from a lot of really, really typical bourbon notes, bourbon flavors. It adds so much more, different layers, different textures on the product. I think it's really, really nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you can't tell that I liked it. I mean, what can I say? Now this is really reasonably priced too, right? Is this the one? Is it like 42? Is that right, or somewhere around there?
We sell it at 42 at the distillery, but most places on shelf it's about $35.
Wow. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's a blend of 4 to 8 year old whiskey at that price point that tastes this good. I mean, that's kind of a no brainer, I think. Because this is something too with that. I was just going to throw this in there, but the we talk about the spiciness to it. I think this would stand up in a cocktail.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times, especially when you get a lower proof, you know, sometimes it's like, well, I don't know how that's going to hold up in a cocktail, but I think this has enough of that punch to it. And those notes that come through from that, from your pot still, I think those will shine through with that peppery finish as well. And I think it would stand up really well in a cocktail. So it's just kind of my opinion.
You know what, Mark? I'm going to give you one more hint. You know, when you look at that bottle and those and the hands, look at what it tells you on your cards.
I can't read it.
Those are the states of distillation instead of.
Now I see.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I like that little Easter egg, in there, right? Yeah. So the states are the playing cards. That's very cool. Yeah, I was like, I'm squinting. I'm like, my contacts. I need to change contacts. Maybe I don't know. Something's wrong here. Now I get it.
Put your readers on, old man.
All right, we're at the end of round one. So let's take a quick break, and we'll get a word from our sponsors. We'll come back with more with the Likarish family with Ironroot Republic Distillery in just a minute.
Hey there, I'm Carrie Van Winkle, founder of Pappy & Company, where we celebrate family heritage and Southern craftsmanship. Check out our curated collection of artisanal goods that embody the spirit of Kentucky. From our signature barrel-aged pepper sauce aged in Pappy Van Winkle bourbon barrels to our luxurious leather goods inspired by generations of tradition, each item reflects our commitment to quality and legacy. Our line of gourmet food items are thoughtfully selected to bring the taste of the South to your table. Indulge in what I can say is the best bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup on the planet. A perfect blend of buttery rich flavors that elevate any dish or cocktail. We're big fans of the Bourbon Life Podcast, and we're honored to share the legacy of our great-grandfather Pappy Van Winkle with all of you. So visit pappyco.com for 15% off your purchase with code BourbonLife15.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I am your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend, my beanie-wearing buddy, my co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Mark, I am great out here in front of the fireplace, just enjoying a nice warm evening here in the Bourbon Life Studios. How are you doing over there in Mission Control?
I'm doing great. I've had one drink, and it feels like I've had four, so we're doing great. I'm heavy pouring.
Yeah, I think you started a little bit before the episode too, if I'm not mistaken.
I may have had one pregame pour. I always allow myself one pregame.
Yeah, it's just
pregame,
like stretching.
Matt, Yeah, exactly right. You don't want to hurt yourself, so you got to take the time, make the time, take the time. Exactly right. They're from Texas. They understand football and the analogy. You got to stretch, you got to warm up, got to get ready for the big game. So yes, I may have had one pour prior to the show, but. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. Couldn't bring you this show every week without all their support. Matt, with that said, would you like to remind everybody who we have with us tonight?
That's right. Speaking of Texas, we are joined by the family behind Ironroot Republic Distillery, the Likarish family. We have Robert, the founder, Jonathan, master distiller and blender, and of course, Marcia, the mother of Texas whiskey. Welcome on back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Here we go.
I love that. The mother of Texas whiskey. I love it when you say that. That's just awesome. So that's going to go on the show notes as well. And I'll probably hope if I can fit it on YouTube, that's going to be on there as well, just so you know. So Jonathan, I feel bad because you're a founder as well. So I feel like I should throw that in there, right?
I was there from the beginning. That's for sure.
So I should probably, because we say, so it's like, Jonathan was also a founder, but we designate him the master distiller and blender for the show.
Got the gray in my beard to prove it.
The stress level that goes with that. Yes. Yeah. Talking about being an attorney and being stressful. I know you guys have your stress levels way beyond what that is, but we're drinking some great whiskey tonight. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This round, we've got two different things poured up, and this is kind of a different offshoot of a different brand. This is called the Saints Alley. This one is the Nobleman we're gonna be drinking first. So I got the little bottle here. Anybody want to talk about what this one is?
Yeah. Sure. So,
I'll show you the big bottle.
Right,
you get the big bottle. There you go.
Go higher.
Oh, yeah, bring it up. Show it up higher.
You gotta hold it up a little higher. Hold it up a little higher. There you go. The Nobleman. Yeah, Saints Alley. All right, who's gonna handle this one? Robert, John,
Get it, John.
All right, so this is Saints Alley, which is similar to our Sleight of Hand, in which it's a blend of other bourbons mixed with ours. But in this case, we start finishing them. And I say bourbons. This one's actually a rye version from Saints Alley. And so, the notes is probably strange if I called it a bourbon.
Yeah, I was like, I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, wait a second, did I pour the wrong one?
So in this case, again, we're going to get some rye from Indiana. We're using some of our rye, and then it gets finished in what we call Tokai casks. And Tokai casks, if you don't know what that is, whoever's out there listening to this, it's okay. It's very strange. You don't see them too typically often as a finish on the whiskey side, although it is starting to become more popular. But it is a Hungarian dessert wine, and it's a special type of wine which they call a noble rot wine. And so there's a special kind of process that involves some fungus and what sounds very unappetizing. But what ends up happening is it actually creates these really distinct sugar flavors that actually have a little bit of funkiness to them. And they actually grade them according to how much sugar they have in them in their wines. And the more sugar they have, the funkier they get. And so if you have a really high sugar one, they can get kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. And so we like those, so we thought it paired up really well with the rye in this case.
That's the is it the Petunia? Is that the scale that it's? Is it? Am I saying that right? Or
I don't know if I say it right, so you may have it correct. I call it a Pouton is what I call it.
Okay, I'm probably just giving it the American pronunciation here, but
that's the Kentucky.
Yeah, the old Kentucky.
It's a Kentucky Petunia.
Tokaji. Yeah,
and yours could be correct, as for all I know. It's
I trust you more than I trust me.
The higher you go, the weirder it gets.
Yeah. Look, I don't even know what Tokai is, so you guys are light years ahead of me. So there. Now, have you guys ever had the wine? Anybody? I've never had the wine.
Yeah,
you've had the wine.
We've had the wine.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a Sauternes cask before? Mm-hmm. So that's the French equivalent, essentially. That's also a noble rot wine, and so it's going to be very similar to your Tokai.
Ah, I gotcha. So it's funky, Matt. It's like your country ham that we cut into last week.
Funky,
I had mold and all sorts of funkiness all over it. So the funkier the better, right?
Yeah.
I'll never forget when they shipped the barrels over the first time. There was still some wine in it,
yeah.
And the first thing Jonathan and I always do is pull the wine out and see what does it taste like. And I looked at Jonathan and I was like, "Jonathan, is this sweet smoky bacon wine?
Right?
Like, what is it?"
Yeah,
that's exactly what it smelled like. Yeah,
that's funny. I have a very similar experience of dumping a Tokai cask that had been shipped over with some liquid left over, and then kind of wondering, like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Like, do we really want to do this with whiskey? Put it in here? Yeah.
What's that Mexican distillate that they hang the meats in the still?
Pachuga.
Yeah. There you go, Pachuga. Yeah. So a little similarity.
Yeah.
So guys, let's talk about the brand itself. Wait, did we already talk about? Did we talk?
Let's hit the nose real quick here.
Yeah. Let's talk about the nose. Sorry, Matt. Jump in there and grab that.
It's got, to me, I'm picking up a lot of like apple kind of cinnamon notes coming across on the nose. I think rye was a great choice to go with this. It really brings some brightness in there as well. Tokai can be so funky that maybe sometimes a bourbon could subdue a little bit of those weird notes in it. And so it's like nice and bright. It's actually, I pick up some floral notes in it as well. I don't know if maybe that's just me.
Petunia.
Yeah, must be. Smart ass.
My mother used to grow sweet peas. It reminds me of that nice
sweet
spring light floral.
It's like the word that comes to mind is just rich. I mean, the profile on it, it's just like so rich, almost decadent to me. that rye, like Matt said. I mean, you kind of get the hint of that, but the sweetness, I guess, from the wine, from the cask itself, that comes through. Just and I don't know, it's almost like a like a fig or something. Maybe something like a dark sugary fruit, maybe. Mm-hmm. Something just very, very nice on the nose for sure. So, and this is 107 proof, right? Did we say that? I
yes.
can't remember if we did or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 107 proof. So
when I smell it, I get like almost this hug of this warm wood on the outside of it. I don't know what it is. It's yeah, I like it.
Yeah, very, very nice. I can't wait to I haven't tasted it yet, so I'm looking forward to doing that. So let's talk about the brand itself, the creation of the brand. Kind of talked a little bit about that, making that decision, deciding not to go and become an attorney. But I mean, the family as a whole had to make this decision, so I'm sure it wasn't made over Christmas dinner. Can you guys talk about kind of the process that you went through? What led you guys up to finally just say, hey, we're going to go to Denison, Texas and start a distillery. Let's do this.
Well, following the dinner, I mean, one of the things we always talked about was that anytime that you're trying to learn to do something, one of the best things you can do is go to the people who you think do it best and talk to them and see what there is to learn. And I think that's exactly what Marcia, Jonathan, and I did. I mean, I mentioned earlier, we traveled around the country. We went to a lot of distilleries that had different things that we really enjoyed. And for us, it was really kind of, I would say, interdisciplinary in the spirits world. We didn't just go to bourbon distillers. We went to brandy distillers. We went to bourbon distillers. We went basically everywhere we go of things that we love that were being made to try to learn and talk to people who were making things. And I think that's ultimately really informed kind of what we do and how we do, a lot of our processes. But I'll never forget, we were getting ready to I was getting ready to graduate, and we knew we were going to start this journey of going and trying to learn at these different places. And Marcia, I remember my apartment had burned down. And I didn't light it on fire. It wasn't me. But apartment had burned down, and Mom was like, hey, well, is there a better time for us to go to Kentucky to go start that journey? And that's, she and I, drove the 4 hours from St. Louis. We ended up at Starlight. It was actually the very first place we went.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the really cool first people we met was Ted over there. And I'll never forget, he was president of ADI at the time, back in 2000, it's like 2010, 2009. And he, took time. He sat down with Marcia and I and we talked through, starting a craft distillery, what that looked like. And because Mom and I were like dead set on going to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. We're like, yeah, we're going to go. We're going to go to Jim Beam and Heaven Hill, and Wild Turkey and Buffalo Trace. We're going to go see everything. And he was like, why are you doing that? Like that, if you're wanting to be a craft distillery, you're not going to learn a whole lot of how to build a distillery by going to Maker's Mark. That's a whole different scale of things than what you guys are going to do. And so he kind of set us off to go visit all the bunch of craft distilleries in the area. But I remember Mom and I still had the night in Louisville that we'd already booked the hotel. So we were like, all right, well, we're going to stay the night in Louisville. So we ended up going over to Vendome. And, at the time, we just walked in. We didn't have an appointment, just bold, brash.
You didn't have to have appointments.
Exactly. And sat down with the team there and started talking about what we were wanting to do, and how green we were. I mean, this was like very beginning of our journey of even learning distilling, and I'll never forget Rob Sherman asking us like how many gallons per hour we wanted to make, and no concept of that.
Yeah.
So
Mom, I'll let you tell the other part of that story from that visit.
So when you walk in the door, they were making a beautiful rum tank. It was like the size of the whole building. And you go into their office and they ask you to sign in. And so I signed the book thinking it was like a welcome book. Back in the old days, restaurants used to sign guest books, right?
Yeah,
I think I should do one of those at the distillery. And so we just signed it and sat down, and Rob and I were like bobbleheads. We were just like shaking our heads. We had no idea what they were talking about. But I always say fate brought us to Denison with the story of TV Munson, and fate took us to Vendome, because when we got ready to build our distillery, I don't think a lot of people understand that in order to start a distillery, you have to have an address and you have to have a still serial number, and then you get to apply for a license.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you have to have all these steps ahead of time. So we had kind of had this plan in mind, and we thought we were going to get something out of Scotland. And when we called them to say we were ready to build a still, they told us, well, you know, times have changed since we originally spoke with you, and now it's a 4.5-year wait. Wow. And we said, that's not going to work so well for us, because we can't start this distillery without that serial number. And so Rob said, well, maybe we should have a family meeting. And we got together, and Jonathan says, do you remember Vendome? Maybe you better call them. So Rob picks up the phone. He calls Vendome, and they said, I'm sorry, it's a 2.5-year wait. And we looked at it, and he says, well, you better put us on the list. And he says, well, what's your name? Now, you know, our name is a little bit different, Likarish.
Oh, right.
And so he said, wait a minute, let me look at something. And he went, he looked, and he came back, and he said, well, I've got some good news for you and some bad news. The good news is that you're at the top of the list. You know, my guest book, I signed up for a still. You should read the fine print when you sign things, right?
Oh, man.
But the bad news was that we had 2 weeks if we wanted to hit their deadlines. And so all of a sudden, we had to figure out what kind of still. And, you know, the traditional, wow, what they were doing so many are all the column stills and everything. And so we started, I think Jonathan and Robert said, well, how do you decide? And they said, well, you better look at stills and flavors you like. So we started buying whiskeys and tasting whiskeys everywhere we could. And as soon as we found something we liked, we'd look at the still. And we found out that the majority of the stills that of the whiskeys, because we not only did bourbons, but we did scotches, we did Irish, we did tequilas, we did all the spirits. And we found out that what we liked was the flavor that a pot still brought. We liked the mouthfeel and the complexity. And so from that point, you start looking at the pictures, and then Vendome works with you and their team and Jonathan, and they got together, and voila, we had a design. And then the even better news was that they were just getting ready to order the 2 pieces that they have made twice a year, kind of the top and the bottom of the still. And we made that deadline, and we had a design. That means you get a serial number, and we got our serial number. And it was the fall. It was just like, how long, Rob?
So it was about 2 weeks to get to work on the design. I mean, we at that point we already knew we wanted a pot still. I mean, having come from that kind of cognac tradition, we knew that was the profile. And when Jonathan and I were even talking about in our minds, what would be something that would really be a Texas whiskey, we wanted something that was heavier, bolder, like really big. And so we started looking at, from pot still, obviously you're getting a much oilier, heavier distillate overall. And that's when we started tasting looking at pot still distillates, looking at a bunch of different scotches and picking out the specific kind of scotch profiles that we liked. And that's when we started looking at those stills. And so when you look at our big pot still, what you'll notice is that angle from the top of the still to the condenser, it's a really sharp downward angle, which is fairly uncommon when it comes to even pot stills for like scotch and stuff. Most of the time they're even, or the line arm's going to have an upward angle. Yeah. That downward angle allows all those heavier elements to come through. And that's kind of the thing that Jonathan really keyed on when he was looking for, he wanted a meatier, heavier spirit. And that's one of the things he really keyed on. And Vendome really helped us kind of work through that design. And even with some of the edits, later on when we were, in our building, we originally, what was the height of the original still, Jonathan? It was
supposed 20? To be a foot or a foot and a half taller than it is now.
And when we came back and we're like, well, the building's only 21 foot tall instead of, so we had to figure out how to shrink it and maintain the proportions. And so they helped play around with the onion size on the still to help compensate a little bit. And one of the things we always talk about is the legs on our still are some unique legs that are these 4 legs that we have instead of the thin pole legs. They got these big wide
chicken legs.
No chicken legs on our stuff. So that's just because it's so much closer to the ground than a lot of the stills would be.
That's awesome. Let's jump back to the whiskey real quick. I love that story, and we can talk some more about it. But let's talk about the whiskey here real quick. Let's talk about the palate and the finish. Matt, what do you pick up on this? The Nobleman.
It's big and spicy right up front. A lot of spice, a lot of that cinnamon comes through. I think the rye really makes itself shown right up front. Then to me, it leads to this like kind of vegetal, earthy type flavor that's somewhat sweet as well. To me, for some reason, I'm just going to describe it as like pepper jelly or like a pepper jam type note. It's kind of like weird, sweet, earthy, vegetal, but really, really delightful. And a nice, long, warm, almost kind of a smoky finish to it in some ways. Just really, really nice, really lovely.
Yeah, it's almost like a peppered smoked raisin. You know, I mean, I get this kind of a raisiny finish on there, which I really, really like. I mean, that was just kind of jumped out to me. But that peppery, like, you know, we talked about that before in the other one, you know, that finish that just kind of jumps out. And if this is 107, again, I don't think this drinks at 107. I think this is maybe drinks lower, but that spiciness kind of pops out as well. But there's that smokiness that Matt talked about also that really kind of stands out there too. But yeah, I get a lot of raisin. It's really, really nice. I really enjoy this for sure. So guys, anything else on that one that we missed?
I think so, that when we do the Saints Alley line, we also have a friend that blends with Jonathan and Chris Trevino, the liquor hound. And so he came to us from the consumer side. And it has a phenomenal palate and a lot of experience with whiskeys. And we needed some additional help. And so, you know, there's only so many things 3 people can do. So when you start an additional brand, it's nice to have somebody come in and work with him. So Chris Trevino and Jonathan work really hard on the Saints Alley side to create blends and to create this profile more than Robert and I work with this side of the business.
I think for me, one of the big things that when Chris and Jonathan, when they were first talking about Nobleman, one of the things they wanted to bring through with the rye was the thing that I get, again, I love that pepper jelly raisin. I love that. To me, I also get a little bit of like orange citrus that kind of comes in there and plays around with it a little bit. And to me, for me on rye, that's one of the things I really enjoy is when you get citrus, but not like a lemon where it comes in with a little bit like darker orange, maybe a little orange zest. It kind of plays in with it. And that to me, I always get on Nobleman as well.
Yeah, it's very nice. Well, we've got something else poured up in this round as well. We'll probably just talk about the nose in this round and carry over the palate and the finish of the second round or the third round. But we've also got another Saints Alley expression. This is called the Herald. You got the big bottle. Hold that big. That was nice. Who wants to talk about the Herald? Share with us what that is.
I guess I'll jump in on this one.
Good, because I'm pouring.
He's pouring. He's busy.
So the Herald was really the spirit that was kind of the impetus for the Saints Alley line. It was one of the things that we kind of, as a team, Jonathan and Chris had really been talking about for a while. One, our family's always had a really love of Armagnac. And to me, it's always been something that's really played really well with bourbon when it came to finishes. There's something with the flavors that just seem to really align. And that black oak they use over there really, really does play well with bourbon. And so when you start looking at some of these complementary flavors that we get between that Armagnac and bourbon, they kind of darken and enrich each other. I think that's where Jonathan and Chris really kind of dug in and seeing like, how can we make these things complement each other really, really well? For me though, on the Saints Alley, it's always been the focus for us is never to have like a big, I would say, finish bomb of a whiskey. The goal is never to make it like dominated by the finish. It's always, how do we take that finish and have it enhance the spirit, but when someone's drinking it, it still is very much bourbon or very much rye. And I think Nobleman really hits a really great balance between the Armagnac and the bourbon.
Nice.
Maybe Jonathan could take a minute and tell us how we create the base and for the whole Saints Alley line.
So the procedure is pretty similar for most of the Saints Alley line that we do. And so usually what we'll do is we'll bring in whatever source barrels we are going to have in the blend. We're going to mix those with the Ironroot barrels, and then we'll create what we call a base tank for that particular spirit. And then we'll take some of that spirit, we'll put it into the finishing casks, and hopefully we're going to over finish in the barrel. So hopefully it's got too much Armagnac in this case. Okay. And then what we'll do is we can actually back blend from that base tank, and so we can get a nice equilibrium and a consistent product each time when we do it that way. Otherwise, you use a barrel once, you get a really heavy finish. You use it the second time, a little bit lighter, your third, hardly any finish left. And so for us to get some consistency and quality for the product, we really like to do kind of that back blend to kind of help it all even out. And exactly what Robert was saying, let the base spirit shine through.
Yeah, and gotcha. I like the process because it allows us to do longer finishes. So a lot of you see our finishes are 6 months, a year and a half that we'll do. And so that, as Jonathan was mentioning, it leads to those particular barrels are going to be over finished, but the integration is really there with how it is integrated with that bourbon. And then when we back blend it, it seems to, again, where you don't taste bourbon and then Armagnac, it's really cohesive in the way that they do it.
The one thing my job is to get the finishing barrels. So I'm looking for finishing barrels. I'm importing ones that have held cognac for 25 years, Armagnac for 20 years, Tawny Ports for the 10-year. So I'm really looking when I choose the barrels for the finishing for it to look because that means that the spirit has gone deep into the wood. And as such, we can leave the spirit longer because it can go really deep in the wood and pull those flavors out.
That makes a lot of sense. Guys, these two, the Saints Alley, these are releases you put out regularly, both the Herald and again, with the blending, is it always going to be to that same profile then, Jonathan?
This one's going to be pretty consistent as well.
Okay.
So the Herald is going to be a small range of variability in it.
Okay. And again, 107 proof, non-chill filtered. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
It's got a really deep and rich nose is what I pick up. A lot of sweetness comes through for me. The Armagnac flavors are definitely there. There's the stone fruit, a deep, sweet, dark stone fruit comes across. Those raisin, those fig notes are really there in it. I think the base bourbon also makes itself known too. It cuts through some of those darker, richer notes and adds a little bit of a zesty, kind of youthful note to it, as well as some of those vanillas and the brighter flavors come across as well. Just a really nice balance, really, really inviting nose.
Yeah, I can't add much to that, Matt, obviously. I just let Matt just take care of it all. So guys, anything else in terms of the nose that stands out to you all for tasting notes?
I mean, Matt's doing a heck of a job over there.
Yeah.
So.
Got a lot of people to impress on this show here. It's not just
that's right.
Not just marketing.
Right.
He's got to do well because I can't nose for anything. My notes are just vanilla and caramel, so that's it. I steer the ship. Matt's the color commentary guy, so you know. Awesome. So was there anything else nose-wise, guys, that stand out that you all want to throw in there or add to that?
No,
I mean, there's something I always get on the nose with Armagnac, and the French would probably kill me if I said this, but it's like a juicy fruit kind of note. I really like that when it kind of pops out on the back of it. Yeah. Reminds me of childhood and begging my mom for gum. So.
And then she pulls it out of the purse and it smells like tissue paper and gum all at the same time. Maybe a little bit of leather from mom's purse. I mean, Matt, didn't we taste a whiskey that we used that as a descriptor? Or I talked about that, like that spearmint gum that comes out of mom's purse at church.
I mean, it sounds like you have such vivid memories of it. I'm sure you you found that somewhere.
Probably, for sure. All right. Well, I tell you what, we're at the end of round 2. Why don't we go ahead and take a quick break, and we can get a word from our sponsors. And we'll come back in round 3, and we'll talk about the palate and finish on this, the Herald, the Saints Alley, and then we'll also jump into the next pour that we're going to be doing as well. But everybody sit tight. We'll be back with more with the Likarish family from Ironroot Republic Distillery in just a minute. Welcome to Old Dominick Distillery, a family-owned craft distillery nestled in the heart of downtown Memphis. Founded by descendants of Domenico Canali, a pioneering Sicilian immigrant who made Memphis his home in the late 1800s, Old Dominick is steeped in history and tradition. Old Dominick prides itself on offering a diverse selection of whiskeys to satisfy every taste. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or a curious newcomer, you'll find something to love, including an 85 proof Tennessee whiskey, bonded Tennessee whiskey, a single barrel Tennessee whiskey, a 90.1 proof bourbon, and coming this fall, a cask strength bourbon. Each bottle of Old Dominick whiskey is crafted with care, featuring unique mash bills that offer a variety of high and low proofs. This dedication to quality ensures there's a perfect pour for every whiskey enthusiast. Old Dominick whiskeys are proudly distributed in several states, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Georgia, Arkansas, Illinois, and Mississippi. Can't find us locally? No problem. You can conveniently purchase our products online and have them delivered straight to your doorstep. Ready to explore the world of Old Dominick? Visit our website at olddominick.com to learn more about our history, discover our products, and find a retailer near you. Visit the historic James E. Pepper Distillery, located in the vibrant Distillery District in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Initially built in 1880 by Colonel James E. Pepper, one of the founding fathers of the bourbon industry, it operated until 1967 when it was shut down and abandoned for over 50 years. After a decade of historical research, the brand was relaunched and the distillery was rebuilt. Distilling resumed on-site in 2017 using the same historic bourbon recipe as when it closed in 1967. The distillery offers a selection of fine whiskeys for tasting and retail purchases, including the award-winning Decanter Bourbon. Intimate guided tours include time in the museum, an up-close look at the grain-to-glass process, and a complimentary tasting. Stop by for an old-fashioned cocktail and see why TripAdvisor ranks the Pepper Distillery as the 3rd best distillery in Kentucky and the #1 attraction in Lexington. Learn more at jamesepepper.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for the 3rd and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there? Oh, wait, he's my co-host as well. It's Matt.
I'm never going to live that down. I'm doing well, Mark. I'm doing great out here. We're having a good time. How about yourself in there? Mission Control, everything all right?
Yeah, man, having a great time. I got lots of whiskey here on my desk here. This is great. Having a good time, getting to sample some things that I've never hearing about. Wine barrels, I don't even know how to pronounce their names or where they come from. But you know, what more could you ask?
Yeah,
for?
You're learning
it's delicious.
All sorts of aspen. Aspen actually is wood. Yeah,
aspen.
Is a tree. That's from an episode.
I did not know that
ago.
aspen was actually a tree. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Anyway, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring you this show with riveting content like Matt and I bantering back and forth every week without the support of all of our wonderful sponsors. Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody, remind them who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Back joining us and joining you all, our loyal listeners this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you are getting your Bourbon Life Podcast, is the Likarish family from Ironroot Republic Distillery in Denison, Texas. We have Robert, the founder, Jonathan, master distiller and blender, but also founder, and Marcia, the mother of Texas whiskey and the boss of it all. Welcome on back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you. This is great. I'm having a good time.
So glad to be here.
I'm not sure if they're happy to be back for the 3rd round, Matt.
I'm happy.
I am.
I'm happy to be back.
Because we got more to tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we definitely do.
What we're here for.
Yeah, so let's jump back over to this Herald. We were sipping on this in the 2nd round. Yeah, you got your big bottle of that looks so much nicer. So as Matt's taking a sip there, I'm going to throw it back to him since he has all the good notes. Matt, what do you pick up palate and finish on this one?
It's got a really nice thick note right on the front of the palate is what I'm picking up. It's like really thick, oily, and creamy right on the front of the palate. Almost there's like a sweet, sticky toffee kind of note that I'm picking up in there. It's really, really, really coats the mouth well all over. stone fruit, like those raisins, those plums, those figs, like really dark red wine notes, almost like blackberry and currant come across as well. But then there's some brightness that cuts through a little bit on the finish, like like even a touch of like a citrus type note, like a little bit of like lemon oil or something kind of comes across and really cuts through all those really thick, lovely Armagnac notes. And I think that probably is coming maybe a little bit from the base whiskey, but I'll defer to the experts on this one.
Yeah, again, I can't add anything to that. So you guys, Jonathan, Robert, anybody, Marcia, you guys got anything you want to add to all that?
Well, I just want to drink it after that description. Man, how could you miss?
Yeah, no kidding, right? That's a lot of descriptors, but spot on, as Matt always is, for sure. So who wouldn't want to drink that?
Oh, man. This one's just always fun to drink, especially around Christmas time. And you start talking about that sticky toffee pudding, like that's one of those things that just brings me back to Christmas and this time of year. And it's one of my favorites to drink out of what we do during this time of year.
Yeah. It's got the baking spices. It's got the nutmeg. It's got the clove. They kind of play all into that. So yeah, we drink it year round, but it's very, very special at this point in the year.
And this one also, this is 107 proof as well, right? So same proof point. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So guys, let's talk about, we talked about the distillery and the decision to start it and how you did that, but we didn't really talk about the name because that also has a special meaning as well. Ironroot. Who wants to share that story? Because that's really unique.
Oh, we always let Rob do that. He's our storyteller.
He's the marketing guy.
Actually, it's more than that. Robert is the one that brought us to Denison because he went to school here, and it was the story that he heard while he was going to school here that planted a few seeds. So I think that he's good at that.
Yeah. So the story. So Denison in the late 1800s was kind of a really kind of cool place to be. It was one of the bigger cities in Texas. It was where the railroad first crossed over into Texas was right Denison. It was the headquarters for the MKT Railroad back in the day. But we had a really interesting resident who lived in town. His name was T.V. Munson. He was an American viticulturist, so someone who studied growing grapes. And kind of at that point in U.S. history, we didn't have a really big, robust wine industry, mainly because the grapes that are grown or were native to North America weren't super great for making like traditional European style wines. Really good for jams and jellies or kind of funky, far out there wine. But when it came to like the traditional European style wines, they weren't really suitable for that. So the Europeans, as they were moving over to North America, just started bringing their own grapevines over and planting them, which unfortunately we have all these bugs and all these plant diseases here in North America that didn't have in Europe. So when they would plant the European grapes here, they would last for a couple of years, then typically would get killed off. In particular, the bugs would attack a lot of the root systems, or the diseases would get into the roots and kind of kill off the plant. So TV, kind of some of his early compatriots, it was their goal to kind of fix that problem. The very first thing they tried was just crossbreeding the grapes together. They figured if you got all the good flavors from all the European grapes and you've got all the resistances in the American grapes, we'll just breed them together and we'll get the best of both worlds, which unfortunately, again, when you just start jumbling a bunch of genes together, you don't always get out on the other end what you're looking for. So T.V. Munson himself created 180 different grape varietals, most of which I would consider like Frankenstein style grapes. They still grow. About 40 of the varieties that he created out of the viticulture school, about 5 miles from the distillery. But the goofiest grape that he made, one of my favorite ones, called Green Giant. And I kid you not, the grapes are like nearly the size of my fist. You get like 2 or 3 grapes per bunch. It has really, really thick skin on it, giant seeds in the middle, and the grape tastes absolutely terrible. So it's a grape that exists, but doesn't really serve a whole lot of a heck of a purpose. So because of that, TV kind of went back to the drawing board. And what he noticed was that there were some grapes that were native to Texas that were highly resistant to bugs, highly resistant to drought, but also grew in really similar soil to what he saw a lot of the native French varietals growing, a lot, at least pH wise. And so he hypothesized there could be some compatibility when it came to grafting. And if he could protect the grapes' root systems by using the native roots, you could grow the French grapes on top and you could probably have some success. And after about 10 years of working on it, he ended up having a lot of success. And he was able ultimately to help a lot of the growers out in California when this little tiny aphid named phylloxera made its way out there and kind of decimated what they were doing. And the Californians were able to start growing these French varietals. So to this day, they're still really known for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and Merlot, and all that stems from a lot of the work that he did. Well, while all this was going on, obviously we had invented the steam engine here, and that travel between North America and Europe became much faster. So all of a sudden, all these bugs that didn't used to be able to survive that trip back over to Europe, now started to survive really easily. And so we just started essentially shipping buckets upon buckets of bugs over to Europe and created a bunch of different blights and havoc a lot of the French growing plants. Yeah, our bad. And one of the things that made its way over was that little tiny aphid called phylloxera. And when it got to Europe, it decimated what they were doing over there. When it hit France, it wiped out close to 80% of the French grapes. You're talking Bordeaux, Burgundy, Cognac, Champagne. All those areas were essentially wiped out, which, as you can imagine, freaked the French out quite a bit. They started scouring the planet trying to find solutions. And through the Smithsonian, they found this crazy dude in Denison, Texas. Next thing you know, he starts shipping them these Texas grapefruits. And to this day, they grow most of their native varietals on top of the descendants of these Texas grapefruits. So the reason why Bordeaux and Burgundy and Cognac and Champagne all exist today is because of these Texas grapefruits and the research that TV Munson did. So for that reason, Denison and Cognac became sister cities. TV Munson was named to the French Legion of Honor, and that's where our name Ironroot comes from. It's the iron grapefruits from Texas that helped save the French wine industry.
Here's the biggest thing I take away from that story. The next time I see a Frenchie, I can just say, you would not have wine were it not for us, right?
That's right.
Now, that's a cool story. I mean, that's great. And I love that you guys derived your name from, even if it is hard for me to say. Sometimes I do.
So you can just stop with Ironroot. That's all you can just say.
Just say Ironroot.
We'll just say Ironroot. I can handle that. That's good. Even after 3 drinks, I can say Ironroot. So we're good with that. So we do have something else poured up on this round. Who wants to talk about what we got here?
Well, I'll talk about this one. All
right.
This is his baby and the strange name.
They all have strange names. So this one's called Ironroot Harbinger. And so Harbinger was the very first bourbon that we released. So when Mom says it was my baby, it kind of my first bourbon that I was putting out. And so this one is going to be a little bit different than everything else we've had because this is 100% made in Denison, Texas. So all the liquid in this was made on the pot still. And so instead of getting just a little portion of the pot still like a roux, you're actually going to get the full flavor profile of what we produce every day at Ironroot. Awesome. We're going to go up in proof a little bit. So 115.
115, right? Mm-hmm. And this is 36 months old, I believe the bottle we have is 36 months old.
No, that's only the youngest. And when you do blends, you have to put the youngest age. And so as we have aged, so has Harbinger. So there's going to be 5- and 6-year-old whiskeys in here too.
Yeah, and you look at the color of this. I mean, goodness gracious, you look at that and you're thinking, oh yeah, there's a 36-month. It's like, what? There's no way, right? So there's older stuff, but it is Texas, so it's crazy how Texas whiskeys mature and age. You guys kind of have a special process with your maturation too, right?
100%.
Yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we've got a process that we call élevage that we use here, and we call ours Texas élevage because élevage is really something that comes from France, and it literally translates to raising or rearing as you would a child. And so there's a lot of different techniques that we can use to kind of encourage the bourbon to become its best version of itself. And so, I mean, it ranges everything from we do slow water reduction and proofing in cask. We'll shuffle barrels around the barrel room. There's certain areas that get a lot more heat, a lot more sun, and so we'll kind of move them around that way. We can adjust proof not just to dilute it for bottling, but we can also adjust proof to encourage different flavors to get extracted out of the casks. And so the entire process is really hands-on. We go through, we taste every barrel once it hits usually 18 to 24 months, kind of depending on where the summers sit on that particular batch. And we'll go through and we'll taste them. We'll take detailed notes on them. Then we actually kind of track them, and each barrel kind of has its own life plan as to what's going to happen for that barrel. And we kind of just eventually coax them as if you're raising a child to be the best it can be at the end of the day.
I always like the joke that like at 18 months, the baby fat of the barrel starts fading away and the personality starts coming out. So you can see, are they going to be snarky? Are they going to be really sweet? Are they going to be early? Like, what does that barrel really start to show? And that's where we kind of start putting it into these different things. So as Jonathan mentioned, we'll let different barrels hang out at different proofs to kind of change what we're absorbing out of the barrel to either balance the barrel to help encourage that spice or encourage fruit or sweetness or whatever we're looking for.
Some of it even starts earlier in the way you run your stills are different because of the influence. So we make choices of the way and the speed that we run our stills. And so it really starts at day one for us.
Yeah, it starts with the grain from the
grain choices.
Yeah. I always like to joke that our friends in Kentucky, they're more of the parents that send their kids off to boarding school for 4 years. And then after that, they'll start seeing where they're at and where they've matured. But in Texas, we have to be more helicopter parents because things can move so fast and move so crazy that we gotta be right on top of them every step of the way.
Oh yeah.
Plus, when you don't have a million barrels, you can taste all your barrels, so that makes a little bit of a difference.
I was going to say that's a rough job, right? We're going to taste the barrels. Everybody come in and we're just going to taste through them all.
I do my own
January's coming.
Well, if you guys need help, Matt's available, and I could probably find my way down there to Denison, Texas as well.
Anytime.
Come on down.
Well, let's talk about this nose on this one, Matt. What do you pick up on the Harbinger?
Oh, my word. This is... there's a lot. I'm picking up a lot on this one, and I love it. First and foremost, I can tell the painstaking love that went into producing this off a pot still. It's got a lot of those really, really great funky notes. Like each time I go back to it is something a little bit different, and each time is a little bit drastically different. So I'm trying to take the aggregate of what I'm smelling each time, but it's just so so dynamic. But I pick up. Marcia, you had mentioned something earlier about smelling or tasting apricots, and that's one of the notes that I really pick up right on the front of the nose with this one. It's like a nice apricot type nose. So there's the brightness, but also sort of the richness, the sweetness from the stone fruit, but the good body in it as well. Then it kind of lends into, I pick up like an almond type note. There's it's not as nutty as a peanut. It's not a big full nutty flavor aroma, just like a kind of almond, like a cinnamon almond type note with it. A lot of influence from the barrel too. Good vanillas, good like char. The oak really shines through on this one. Then sort of like some of those funky earthy notes on it as well that are just really, really lovely. This is like super dynamic. Having trouble.
What's kind of funny is when we do our tours, we always say, Lincoln Henderson from your part of the world. It's always said that a good whiskey tells a story. And coming from education, I always say a good story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But as you say, it keeps evolving. And I say an even better story has more chapters. So as you sit and you spend time with it, you get more flavors, you get more time, you get more, it just evolves as you drink it. That's what we love about Harbinger.
Yeah.
I always tell everybody that we don't make bourbon, we make adult everlasting gobstoppers.
No kidding.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a big year for you guys, right? This is year number 10, if my math is correct. Is that right?
You are correct.
I can't do tasting notes, but I can do math. How's that? So talk about that. I mean, how important is that to you guys? What's it mean for you guys?
Oh man, it's kind of crazy. You know, as I think we've been doing this for 10 years is one thing that was pretty nuts. I know it was incredibly special at the 10th anniversary, which was a week ago? Is that?
Yeah.
Has it only been a week since then? Jeez. We actually released the first 10-year-old bourbon from us. Wow. And that was a really cool experience because that was
awesome.
My brother's daughter's barrel, the Danica barrel, got released as part of and it was both her and her brother's barrel got released. And that was one that's just been really special to us because that was, the first barrel from the very first run off the still. And that was a really, really cool, special moment.
And we accidentally laid it down on Danica's 3rd birthday. Oh. In addition. So, I mean, it was, it's always been the Danica barrel. And,
you can add that to your fate
and it was one of the very few that we did that was only yellow dent corn because, after this, about the 3rd distillation, we started and moved into what we're known for is our use of heirloom corn as our flavoring grains. And we use those, we use bloody butcher corn, we use a purple corn, we have about 40 different varietals, but we have our corns that we use, and instead of just rye as a flavoring grain, we will use our heirloom corn to add complexity the same way that brandies and wines add different grape varietals. We do different corn varietals, and we end up with different profiles depending on how we blend them together.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I don't know, Robert, Jonathan is master distiller. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? And I'm sorry we didn't even talk about that earlier. We probably should have told people about that. How you guys?
Robert's got purple corn right there. He's showing you. So we've distilled over 60 different varietals of grain. And the bulk of those we've used as just flavoring grains, trying to see what a small percentage will bring to it. I don't even know what that one is, Rob.
That's
from the
green Oaxaca.
But
I was going to say it looks green to me.
Yeah, a little bit of Floriani too, gentlemen.
Floriani's are one of our favorites.
It's a flint corn.
So, but we do things a little bit differently from the standpoint of we set up 4 core mash bills. 3 of those are 100% corn. They just use either purple corn, bloody butcher corn, or Floriani flint corn as flavoring grains. And of course, the 4th one has a touch of rye in it. But it's still a low rye mash bill. And so we'll use those, and then we actually blend to the Harbinger profile. So over the course of 10 years, there's probably only been about 4, maybe 5 barrels that actually taste exactly like Harbinger should. And so otherwise, it's always been done through blending. And everything we do here is very much obviously inspired by the French, but everything is blend heavy. And when you're a small producer, it's actually really important to be able to blend from the standpoint of you want to be somewhat consistent with what you're producing. You want that quality to be there. And so if you only have a handful of barrels, you can't just go randomly select 2 barrels, blend those together and put them out and expect them to taste exactly like the same profile every time. So it's part of it's out of necessity and part of it's out of love for loving it too.
One of the standards we set very early though comes from pretty much a Japanese concept, is that we will look for those blends to be consistent, but our goal is to consistently make them better, especially when you start with younger, whiskeys. And as we get older and older, we're looking for the same profiles, but how can we elevate that to the next level?
I'm glad you didn't say it was going to be the Japanese theory of just-in-time delivery.
As an industrial engineer, I appreciate that, Jake.
I'm going to pull my Deming. I've got a Deming book over here on the.
I've read that book.
Marcia's point on that too. We've definitely made some changes over the years. About 4.5 years ago, we moved away from using 53-gallon barrels to 65-gallon barrels. So all of our barrels really since then are 65. So we use a larger barrel size. We actually use very low level char. Most of our barrels are char 1 with some sort of heavy toast profile built into them. We just found that with the more aggressive environment that we have in Texas, that whiskey is going in and out of that char layer so often that we didn't need a ton of char. We needed, obviously, the caramelization of a lot of the sugars through the toasting, but we didn't need a lot of char. In fact, when we had char 3, char 4, we actually found it to be a negative impact on the spirit by having that high level of char, because it was almost pulling out too much out of the spirit.
Very tannic.
Yeah, it comes out looking like tannic coffee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you put all these heirloom grains in there, and it extracts those flavors out. You don't even get to taste. If I put purple corn in there, it's no different.
Strips the personality out of the mash.
If the wood rips it out,
And going back, we are not doing 100% of any of the heirloom corn. We are looking at, I think I love the way Jonathan used to describe it. He said, a base mash is going to be your steak, but your steak is not nearly as good as when you add seasoning, but we're not going to put the whole container of salt on it. We're only going to sprinkle the salt. We're going to sprinkle the pepper. We're going to add a little garlic. We're going to add this, of course, Texas, a little barbecue. We're going to add, and as we do this, if we keep these as flavoring,
Mama, you put barbecue on your steak?
She doesn't cook the steaks down here.
Excuse me, Robert. I have some of the best from El Paso from the steakhouse. I like some of this stuff on mine.
Barbecue on your steak.
Well, hey, Matt. Now we know where the smokiness comes from. Whiskey we're drinking.
You know what my favorite thing is?
Marcia's secret barbecue.
Is that when we taste some of our barrels, we even name our barrels. One of our releases early on for our 10-year were small bottles, and we had 3 of them. And we had watched them as barrels age. Sometimes you see a flavor that you like, but as it usually ages out. But we did a release because we had these barrels and we had tasted them, and they never lost the flavors. And my favorite was, we called her Violet Beauregard because of Willy Wonka. And if you tasted that whiskey, it has the most phenomenal blueberries. Then we went to Captain Jack, because we talk a lot. Sometimes we find those rummy characteristics. Well, Captain Jack never lost his rum. And so he was released as Captain Jack. And the last one was called Burnt Ends, because we had the barrel that just had that beautiful burnt in umami barbecue on it. And they released, and as they came out as the set of 3, we love our barrels. We name our barrels. We have, we had 777 might have been that was
slot
our
machine.
Slot
machine.
And we have
Joker's Wild.
So as we taste them, we have a number of them that get names, and as they get names, sometimes people who get to bottle here sometimes get to taste the barrels, and so they watch them evolve. But it's really fun when you see a few of them that kind of don't lose those flavor profiles.
Sure. Yeah, that's the fun thing about bourbon, right? Just to watch it mature and age and change or not change. I mean, that's fun. And making it yourself, I can't imagine that experience, to be able to make those barrels, lay them down, and then to watch them change over time.
Come on down and taste them.
That sounds like a good plan, Matt. We're gonna have to figure that one out. So let's talk a little bit about the future. Things coming up. Any big news or anything you want to share with us? Things that on the horizon for you guys?
You made it to year 11.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we did make it to year 11. No, I mean, right now we're finishing up a pretty big expansion project for ourselves. We've just finished up the new bottling building. in a couple of weeks, the new barrel warehouse starts, because Jonathan has basically just been stuffing barrels wherever we can find space right now. It's in the closets, and then it's everywhere.
The hallways.
Do you remember that game when you were a kid and it was the squares and there was one open square and you had to slide everything around?
Yeah.
That's
I've been doing that for about 6 years. Yeah.
Was it Tetris? Tetris? Was that what it's called?
Yeah, we're going to get rid of the shipping container.
I don't know what the name of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Shuffle game.
So we've got that. We have a new still. It's going to come and join old Jim Bowie here. I guess probably mid next year sometime. We've got a new big pot still coming in.
Also
that we're
been done.
really excited to have. So that's the big things around the distillery. But we've got some really fun releases coming this next year. We've been working on all sorts of stuff. We've got next year is really kind of the experimental release year.
Nice.
I think there's some wheat whiskey coming out for the first time from us that we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a wheated malt that we made years ago that's in collaboration with the brewery that's going to be coming.
Okay.
A lot of really cool things that are like 7 and 8 year old whiskeys that are going to be coming out from us next year. So it's going to be pretty fun.
Very nice. Yeah. Put us on the mailing list. Oh my gosh. So I always like to ask our guests, because we're close to, we got to talk about the palate and finish on this one, don't we, Matt? We didn't do that.
Yeah, we got to do it.
Yeah. What do you get on the palate and finish?
I have got to say that the palate and the finish on this were not what I was expecting. It's super warm right up front, which I was expecting coming from the nose, but it's so much of like a roasted malt, toffee, cereal note, like cornbread, chocolatey palate on this. I was very surprised because I did not pick up many of those notes on the nose, and there's just such this roasted malt. I would think this would be like a high malt product if you had asked me if I weren't able to smell it and just taste it. It's just got these really, really beautiful, like I said, like cereal notes, toffees, just roasted, really rich, delicate notes, and it's finally finished off by that bright, like citrus jam sweetness that comes around on the end. But this was not what I was expecting. It's absolutely, it's delicious.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
We always describe this thing as like syrup on top of, drizzled over pancakes, big helping of butter, maybe dusting of cocoa powder, something like that. Little fresh fruit on the side, both kind of red berries, and then maybe even a touch of coffee. I call it brunch usually. So
brunch in a glass.
Yeah.
I think you get some really nice, like pecans that have been toasted in brown sugar in there too. And once in a while, I can find a wonderful orange marmalade as the finish.
Yeah, that little citrus note he was talking about.
Citrus, comes through. Yeah, very nice. All right, so let's talk about, I always like to ask this question. What has been the best part of this journey for you guys so far, each of you individually? Marcia, I'll ask you first.
You know, what I love most about it is working with my sons. Every day I get to see them. I get to see my grandchildren grow up. When we moved from Montana, it was always only us, Jonathan, Robert, and Dad. And we moved 7 times. And always we were always at such a distance. And the joy of being able to find our roots here, spend time with them, see them create their dreams and being part of it. I am just blessed to be able to share the family and be here with them. And then I think that the community that we have had the opportunity to be part of, and all the people that come to the distillery, and so many of the friends, I just can't tell you how much I love being part of it.
Well, that's wonderful. Guys, Robert, Jonathan, you guys can't top
Can't
right?
top that,
It's like me trying to come up with tasting notes after Matt talks, man.
Ditto.
But I'll ask you guys, anything? What's your favorite part beyond that?
For me, getting to release the kids' barrels this year was really important to me. That was exciting. I already know I'm going to we have some single malt laid back. That's going to go into their barrels. So the next thing that's going to come out of we called it, so my daughter's name's Danica, my son's name's Granger. You put that together, they call themselves Team Danger. We didn't do that on purpose. We might have screwed up. But so there will be a second Team Danger release. It will not be in a bourbon format at that time. But I think as a whole, it's funny because we get to go to work every day, but it doesn't really seem like work. There's stresses and strains in everything you do, but for us, it just seems when Marcia refers to things as, or Mom refers to things as having like a real job. So John used to have a real job, and I used to have a real job. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a real job what we do now. So
very cool, Rob. How about you, man?
I mean, for me, I think when we set out, we wanted the ability to kind of create something with your hands and kind of have something that's a result of your hard day's work. And to me, when we start having these releases that you just sit back and you go like, wow, this is something that we did, that we spent, blood, sweat, and tears making, and now is out in the world, whether that's, the brandy that we've sat on for 9 years, playing around with different fruit from Texas to when Jonathan released the cigar blend, Harbinger, which was it was an unfinished bourbon. So it's just regular straight bourbon cigar blend. That was, and when you see people it goes out and you get some of that, that FOMO, I feel like a Buffalo Trace employee some days with that. It's because people were just going and grabbing it wherever they could get it. And it just made you, so incredibly proud that, that we'd spent, 8 years of our life making that thing that people actually wanted and people were running after. And we got to make it as a family. We got to make it with our friends that work with us now. It was just something that gives you just a ton of pride. And that to me has been some of them, other than being able to do stuff with the family, it's been really, really special.
Yeah, I think that you just said that. We also have been so blessed because the team at Ironroot, there's only 14 of us, and they are so dedicated, and they are so much, part of the family that it's just amazing. We didn't go out and look for employees. Employees came to us, and they are the most amazing group of people that you could work with.
Wow. I mean, that speaks volumes about who you guys are, but also what you're doing. So that's very cool. So where can people who are listening, where can they find your products, and where can they get more information about Ironroot?
If you're outside of Texas, the easiest place to find our stuff is going to be at Total Wines, kind of across the country. We do have distribution through that. In Texas, you can find it at Specs, Total Wine, any of the major retailers here in the state, plus a lot of independents. We do some really cool, fun projects with some of the smaller stores as well. So those are generally the easiest places, but you can always come visit us. We always got cool, fun things at the distillery. Come see the still being made, and if you show up and Mom's in a good mood, we'll let you taste out of the barrel too. So it's always a fun day to come visit.
Oh, guys, that's awesome. So, hey, look, I'm not going to say that I had a favorite of the night, but I noticed that the Nobleman bottle is empty at this point. I'm not saying where the last of it ended up, but I'm just going to say. So let's talk final thoughts. Anything else you guys want to add? Marcia, anything you want to add before we get out of here tonight?
I so appreciate you welcoming us to your channel and letting us be part of your story. And thank you very much. And we look forward to talking to you again. And, I'm coming out to visit you.
Awesome. Right? Come up to Kentucky. Anytime you're in Kentucky, let us know. We're in Lexington, so we'd love to see you guys for sure. Jonathan, how about you, man? Any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
No, I just want to get out of here so we don't even encroach on Freddie No's record. So
we got to keep that 2-hour mark sacred for Fred.
That's right.
That's right.
I mean, come on. Robert, what about you, man?
I just, again, as Mom said, thanks for giving us the time and helping us spread the story. And, if you guys ever decide to head down south to warm up a bit during the winter, you can let us know. We're happy to put you up in the barrel warehouse. So
it's 60 degrees still here today.
It was only 20 this morning, so I'll take 60 over 20 any day of the week. Matt, final thoughts, man, before we get out of here.
Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to sit down with Mark and I and chat with all of our listeners out here, tell your story, share really, really great products with us, and let us brag about you all for the last hour and a half. It's been really, really great, really fun to hear the story, really enjoyed the products and hearing all the pride, the love, everything that's gone into it. I think it comes across in what you're putting in the glass and giving all of us. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Guys,
happy holidays.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yes, exactly. Same to you. I can't follow much more what Matt said. I mean, come on, how can you top what he just said? I mean,
he's
not
good.
At all, but
he's good.
He is, man. He's like he's got that silver tongue. He just like knows what to say. Daggone it. But thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. And again, I'm sorry it took us so long to get you guys on the show, but so happy we had you here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Enjoyed everything we had tonight. The Nobleman is my choice. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. Loved it. Very fun. So we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. We could not bring you this show every week without the support of all of our sponsors. So thank them for all they do. And of course, you, our listeners, we appreciate you all as well. Like Matt always says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you get your Bourbon Life fix, we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life, or you can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you in there with us. Don't forget to check out our friend Big Mike, or Big Tex, Big Chief, whatever you want to call him, doing the whiskey trip. That comes out every Tuesday under our umbrella. So check him out. He's also on Instagram and Facebook as The Whiskey Trip, so give him a follow as well if you would. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full. May you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature the 2024 Distillers Share releases at the November event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.